This is a 2006 Roketa 250cc quad. These were produced in China, I believe from 2004 to 2009. So these were sent over to the US and sold at the dealerships for $2,500. He said he was having some issues with this a couple of years ago, and that's kind of when he parked it, and then hasn't started it since. Ooh. Smells really burnt. Ooh. It's not a good sign. When you see sand on the inside of the filter, really good spark. There we go. Get this going in. Oil rings weren't stuck. Bat ring gap. That is huge. 69 thousandths. So that thick of a ring gap. It should be like 12 to 16 thousandths of an inch. So rings were really worn down. Welcome back to part 2 on the Roketa 250cc quad. If you guys missed the last video on this machine, we picked this one up for 300 bucks. So the seller stated that it was in non-running condition, hadn't ran in a couple of years, and he said that when it did run, it was smoking a ton and the clutch wasn't working. So we actually dug into it, got this thing to run after a carb clean, a fuel change, and a couple other things. Got this thing to run good, but it was smoking a ton. There was not a mosquito in sight after we ran this thing. It was horrible. And then it wouldn't move when you shifted into gear. So we actually had to adjust the cable to get this thing to move, and it finally moved, but it still wasn't that great. So we ended up tearing apart the clutch cover and finding that the plates were completely burnt up. We then took off the top end and found that the ring gap on the rings was like that big. It was the biggest ring gap I think I've ever seen on any quad. So what I think happened was the sand from the air filter was getting sucked into the engine and basically acting as sandpaper. And that's why the rings wore down so fast. And that's why we had a smoking quad. So that's kind of where we ended last video. We were ordering up some parts for this thing. We got those in finally. They came in the mail. So we've got the brand new top end kit. Came with the cylinder, the piston, and all the gaskets. And then we've got the brand new clutch here as well. So what we're going to do is open these up, inspect them. Hopefully they're the same size as what we have on there now. And then we're going to install them and see if that fixes their problem. All right, let's open these parts up. Here's the cylinder kit. Let's check that out. Hopefully it's the same size as the other cylinder we have on there. It says it was, but you never know. Let's see what we're dealing with here. So, it came with the gaskets here. So base gasket and head gasket. All right, let's take a peek at the rings. Well, comes with the rings. I'm not seeing the clips in here. Hopefully they're in here. Oh boy. They put them in the side. At least they were in there. Clearance there is pretty small. It says 250cc on there. Cross hatches look nice. Doesn't look horrible. Let's take a look. Pin looks good. Comes with valve seals as well. We can replace those. Here's the piston. So now we can compare it to the other one we have. Let's see if these are the same. So this cap we're going to have to take out, put in this one. I believe that's for, yeah, the rockers there. We have to swap the rockers over. Otherwise, I mean, it looks pretty darn close to being the same, doesn't it? So we should be good. Let's see the bottoms. Yeah, everything looks like it's the same. All right, let's check the piston size. So here is the old piston. Make sure it's the same height. Yeah, they look identical. All right, so I think we ordered up the right kit. All right, let's take a peek at the new clutch here. See what that looks like. Hopefully it's the right one. Actually, that's the battery. That's not the clutch. We got a new battery for it as well. So there's the new battery. Let's just test the voltage on that. I've been having bad luck with batteries ordered from eBay. Let's see if that one has voltage. I think it was like 20 bucks. 25. 12.7. Okay. We got a couple more parts as well for it. So here's the air filter. We got a foam filter this time. We'll see if that fits. Pretty darn close. That should work. Cool. This is the one I'm a little iffy on. eBay, this one doesn't say it works specifically for the quad, so I couldn't find any other options. So we'll see. Here we go. Looks similar. So if you guys remember from the last video, this piece was on here like that with a nut. And that nut, you had to use a special tool, the spanner tool. And I looked up online everywhere for the correct spanner tool, and it said it was this one. I think it was 22 millimeters and 24 millimeters or something like that. And this is the one I had. So this was the correct one the whole time, except this part did not fit in here. I had to grind this down probably 2 millimeters to make that fit. And this was too small, and this was too big. But after grinding it down, we finally got it to work. So that had to fit over this nut, like that. But that finally worked. You could see it was just a little bit too big. So we modified that tool. We finally got that nut off, which allows us to take the clutch off. Let's see. Here comes the clutch plates. Oh yeah, look how black that is. We'll take a closer look on the bench. Man, doesn't look too good. So this washer has to come out. Let's see. All right. Basket doesn't look bad. All right, taking a look at the clutch. Like I said, the basket and the gear teeth are fine. That doesn't look bad at all. Inner basket's fine, but we got a whole new clutch, so it doesn't really matter. Here are the clutch plates. You can see how burnt it got right there. Yeah, these are horrible. Look how thin those are too. All burnt up, and it smells awful. So let's just compare it to the new clutch we got. So here's the new one. See if it's the same size here. Oh yeah, looks to be. Clutch plates. Take a peek. It's so much thinner than the ones on there. Wow. So those were really, really worn down and just completely burnt up. So yeah, we're just gonna install the new clutch and see how it goes. All right, new clutch basket going on. This is not going to fit. All right, after further investigation, it looks like this clutch gear in the back here is bigger than the one here. You can see the teeth are actually different, and when you measure them, this one is 126.47. This one is 129.77. So yeah, that's quite a bit bigger. 3 millimeters bigger on this one. But I did, however, measure the clutch plates, and the clutch plates are the same. Steel plates as well. So what I think we can do is just swap the plates over and everything else over. It looks like these are the same too, the inner clutch basket here. These are all the same. Same specs there. Alright, so original clutch basket going on. Let's see how easy this one slides on compared to the other one. Yeah, see, that goes right on. The other one was way too big, hitting that gear. All right, next is our washer. That goes on like that. Make sure that's completely tight. And then we're going to be using the old one of these. The new one just looks a little different. And the piece here is different as well. So this is the old one. It has a bigger diameter for a bearing. So we're going to be using the old one as well, just to make sure that works. So this piece goes here, just like that. And then the clutch plates go on. This has been sitting in oil. Start off with the fiber plate, and then steel plate. We're just going to do that until the last two fiber plates. Fiber, steel. And now these two fiber plates go in the different slot on the clutch basket. You can see we were putting them in that one, now we're putting them in this one. So that's only the last two on here that go in the second slot. Alright, and again, the second slot. Inner clutch basket going on. So this is the hard part, it has to line up perfectly with all the clutch plates. Wiggle that back and forth until it goes all the way back. Our C-clip goes on next. Like that. So, 6 new springs going on. Piece. Alright, those are torqued down. Now our bearing goes in. And then our little push rod piece goes into the bearing. Like that. So what happens is when you pull the clutch, it pushes on that rod, which then expands the clutch plates, and then they can free spin, right? This piece going on now. Doesn't matter which way that goes. Get your washer. It says out on the washer. Alright, and then use our spanner tool to get this nut on here. Clean that off really nicely. We can put a little gasket maker on this surface here, and here, like that. And then we're going to use some blue Loctite for the bolts here, little screws. Those tighten down. All right, cover going on. Let's see if we can do it. All right, clutch cover is all back on. Let's see if it's working. Yep, feels pretty good. So hopefully the new clutch plates fixed our clutch issue. Now that we have the clutch all figured out, let's go ahead and start working on the top end. So, got the rings here. Let's measure the ring gap. See if they're within spec here. So you can see here's the top ring. You can see there's an R on it. It's gonna be facing up on the piston. And then you've got RN right there. That will be facing up as well. This is the second ring. Usually the shiny metal ring is always the first ring. And then the black, solid, bigger ring is always the second ring. So let's measure the ring gap. Shove that in there. Take a peek. So on a 250, you want to be usually between 12 and 16 thousandths of an inch. That is really small. We might have to shave that down a little bit. That looks to be less than 10 thousandths of an inch, I would think. Let's see. Yeah, that's less than 10 thousandths of an inch. Less than 9. I think it's like 7. Less than 7. I think 7 just fits in. So that is way too small of a ring gap. We're going to have to fix that. Let's see what it is over here. Look how tight that ring gap is right there. Well, that's an issue. I think that's less than 7. Yeah, 7 just fits in. We're gonna have to shave that ring down a little bit. Let's see what the second ring is. It looks like it's a little bit more. That one's like 8 thousandths of an inch. Maybe 9. So that one's not as bad. Yeah, between 8 and 9. Check the other end over here. Man, they've got tight ring gaps. I don't know why the factory would make them that tight. 9 fits in right there. So what we're gonna do is take a file and then just file down one edge, one end of the ring until our gap is the correct size here. All right, we just shaved down the second ring here. Let's see how that fits in there. Before it was 9/1000ths of an inch. Now you can see the gap there. That looks a lot better. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. Right there. So I believe it's at now 13/1000ths when I measured, which would be perfect. Yep, just fits in at 13/1000ths. So second ring is set to 13/1000ths of an inch. Let's do the first ring. We're just going to grind that down a little bit. Just shaved down the second ring. Now, this one should be at 13/1000ths as well. So now you can see the gap there. Our feeler gauge just fits in there. So we are perfect at 13/1000ths of an inch. So now the first ring and the second ring are the same size, same ring gap. So that's good. Before they were extremely tight. That would have definitely locked up. So what we're gonna do now is install the piston. Let's see what the clearance is on that. Feels pretty darn tight. But there's really nothing you can do about that. It should just drop right through. See how it's getting stuck like that? We're gonna take some fine sandpaper, just go along the edge here. There could be a couple burrs holding that up. Pretty much deep burr. Some of these cheaper pistons aren't the highest quality. But that was the only option we had, so what are you supposed to do? Okay, so what I might do is run a hone through this. Let's see if it's steel plated. Yeah, it's magnetic. We're gonna run a hone through it. I just don't like that the piston gets caught up like that. I'm gonna lube this up a little bit. Let's see what that does for us. There now. Still pretty darn tight. I don't like that. I mean, it's just really tight. Let's see what the original cylinder looks like. We might have to use that. See, that slides right through. That's how it should be. Look at it. See, it's not getting caught up at all. But now, I'm guessing my ring gaps are too big. Let's see, hopefully not. Yeah, I think they're gonna be too big now. Oh, nope. They look fine. $14,000 goes through. As long as we're not above 16, we should be fine. Yeah, 15 doesn't go. So that ring gap should be fine. Let's check the front. That's a little bit bigger. That one's right at 16, right there. Yeah, they're right at 16, that ring gap. I think we're gonna have to use the old cylinder though. That one slides right in, no problem. All right, we decided to go with the old cylinder. I think the new one's just a little too tight for my liking. I think we're gonna play it safe and go with the old one. So quick hone on this. All right, oil ring going on first here. Let's get those installed. Make sure that those are within the right spec too. We don't want to make those too small. Those are fine. Second ring going on here. You want to stagger that gap there so they're not overlapping. Looks good. Alright, and then the second ring is going on with the RN facing up as you install it. Install that ring. Go. Then the top ring is the silver ring, and it's got the R facing up. There we go. So you want one here, one ring gap there, one ring gap 180 away from the first ring gap, like that. So they're all staggered. And then we've got one clip in the one side, and then we can go ahead and install that on the machine. Here's the other clip. Alright, we are going to install the piston. First we need to get it to top to center. As you can see, right there, you can see the T with the line. It's going to line up with the notch in the case there. And then to make sure you're not 180 out, you want to look down here. There's going to be a lobe here that contacts the rockers on the cylinder. And that lobe is going to be pointed up. So it's pointy, and then as you go down, it expands down like that. So it gets thicker towards the bottom. You want the pointy side up, because that means it's not contacting the rockers as much, which in turn then doesn't push up the push rods and push the rockers at the head to make zero clearance at the valves. Hopefully that makes sense. Gasket in place, prevent any leaking. And it looks like from the factory there was gasket maker on the base gasket as well. And this way. Push it over the pins here without ripping it. Kind of hard to get to this one. on the rod here. Get that going in. A little oil down there too. So on the piston there's going to be an IN, you can see it right there. That goes towards the intake of the bike. So it faces towards the carburetor side. Let's see if we can get this on here now. There we go. And we can get the other clip in. Alright, cylinder going on next. Everything's lubed up, ready to go. Rockers right here. You guys can see that. You just expand those a little bit, and that's going to go over that lobe that we talked about. And when the lobe's skinny, these rockers are able to come close like that. As you twist the engine over, that lobe gets a little bit thicker, and it pushes those rockers, which in turn pushes the push rods that are attached to the rockers down here. And then those rods would be up higher and then pushing on the rockers on the head, which in turn closes the distance between the rocker and the valve. So we are going to install this now. Everything looks good. Ring gaps are staggered. So to do this, we just put this on here. This is the hard part. You don't want to break a ring. All right, time to work on the head. So the kit included new valve seals. We're gonna replace those. The seller said he did this, I think he said 2 years ago, replace the valve seals. So it was pretty recent, but we're just gonna go ahead and do them anyway. Get them off of here. Alright, the little keepers are coming out. There we go. Both those popped out. Alright, we can take this off and check out and see what that valve looks like. Spring, dual spring. There's our exhaust valve. A little bit of carbon on there. Let's see if they're steel valves. I don't think they are. Nope. So you can't lap the exhaust valve in because it's not steel. There's a coating on there that if you lap it, it will wreck that coating. So we're just gonna take a wire wheel brush and get that carbon off there. Let's see if I can get that off. Yeah, that wasn't on there very tight. I know that. We can still clean it up. A lot of times the intake are going to be steel. calipers are coming. Ooh, that one flew. Take a peek. So taking a look at the surfaces here. Yeah, surfaces look pretty darn good. Here's the intake valve, that looks nice. Not a ton of carbon on there. We can still clean it up. There is actually a pretty good ridge on this intake valve, if you guys look. It's pretty worn down. You can see that indentation there. So that's not the greatest. You might have to lap that one in. It's a steel valve, so we can, in fact, lap it in. Alright, let's get off the valve seal on this side. Again, that was not on there very tight. That's what that one looks like. Alright, intake valve cleaned up, got all the carbon off of there. And then we've got the exhaust valve cleaned up pretty good. So what we're going to do is leave the exhaust valve the way it is, because that's not steel, and we'll lap in the intake valve. So a little bit of that. Alright, stick our valve through. And then we can get that lapped in. Alright, so here are the new valve seals. Open those up. So it looks like the old ones are pretty worn out. I like to put a little oil on there and just push those on. Just like that. On there. Like that. A little washer goes on before the spring. Just like that. Then small spring. Then big spring. And then we can get that compressed on. Alright, in this part we're going to skip ahead. The keepers are really hard to get back in place. Right, exhaust valve back in place. Alright, so the washer on this one's already in place. So we just have to add the small washer. And then the springs. So, small spring, big spring, then we can get our valve through. There we go. Head looks good to go. Valves are all in. Cleaned off the valves, replaced the valve seals, lapped in the intake valve. So everything's good to go. Let's get that installed. Here is the head gasket. Let's see which way it goes. goes just like that. All right, head going on just like this. This bolt goes through the head down to the cylinder to the rockers down there and locks them in place. So you have to make sure those are in the right direction. Zip those down. And when you get those torqued down, I don't have a manual for this machine at all. I'm guessing they're probably right around 20 to 25 foot-pounds. All right, I have this set to 23 foot-pounds. Let's see what that does. All right, now the push rods go in. Make sure they're lined up with the little rockers down there. Both the same size. Makes it easy. All right, our rockers go in next. Let's see which way. All right, so we ended up adjusting the valves again to 2/1000 of an inch on the compression stroke. So that's when you want to adjust those. These were way off because the head gasket that came with the kit was way, way thinner than the one that was in there. The one that was in there was really thick, so I'm hoping that doesn't mess things up. So this is how thick the other one was. This is the original one. The other one was just a piece of metal. It was real thin. So I had to adjust the valves quite a bit, and now we're good. But yeah, now they're set to 2/1000 of an inch. You can hear them clicking. And that is set on the compression stroke. So you can put your thumb on the spark plug hole, turn over the engine, and when you come to T, that air should be blowing your finger off. Valve cover going on here. Just like that. All right, the carb we cleaned last video, so we can just get that bolted up. So go on right like that. Make sure that O-ring's in place, just like that. All right, spark plug going in. We're getting close to the first start here. Just like this. Super gaskets in there. Yep. Now we've got to get the air filter on. So the air filter needs to fit on the carb and come through the gas tank there. Hopefully it'll fit. All right, here is the filter. Let's get that oiled up. We're using some of the Tusk foam filter oil. Spray that. Rub that in good. Alright, let's go see if that fits. It's a little big. Oh, that's pretty good. That fits nicely in there. Good. Last video. So we got a smaller one that should work. Hopefully. We're gonna find out here. Alright. Take this one out. Get it stuck in there. Battery. Fits in there pretty good. All right, let's get some oil in it. It takes 0.8 liters of oil. We're using 10W40 wet clutch oil. All right, this can all go in. Alright, oil change is done. Well, I think we're ready for the first start attempt. So getting to this point was very interesting. You know, the clutch plates and everything didn't really match up with the other clutch. It wasn't the exact same clutch, so we kind of had to mismatch the clutch. So I'm hoping that it does go into gear and moves at least with that new clutch. The top end we kind of had problems with as well. It seemed like the piston was too big for the new cylinder, so we ended up using the old cylinder with the new piston. But we've got brand new rings, brand new piston, brand new valve seals, so we'll see what the heck happens. The pipe is so saturated in oil, so this thing will probably smoke for a while after the first start, but we're hoping it clears up eventually and quits smoking. All right, choke it. Gas is on. Alright, well at least she fired up. I don't see a ton of smoke coming out, but the throttle cable is kind of hard to pull in, and it's not idling. So let's try to get this thing to idle, and then we'll come back and fire this thing back up. Alright, let's see what happens now. Idling good now. No smoke yet. Here it comes. Idling great though. So I think it's burning off all the old smoke in the pipe right now. But top end sounds really good. So far so good. We're gonna let this run for a little bit, do a little break-in, let it cool down to the touch, start it back up and do the same thing a couple times. Get this thing broken in. But yeah, you can see the smoke coming out of the pipe right there. Right there. But yeah, at least she fired up. I wasn't sure with that piston and cylinder. Sounds pretty decent. Oh yeah. All right. We'll turn it off, let it cool down to the touch, and then come back. All right, this thing's cooled down to the touch. Let's start it back up, break it in again. That fired right back up. Alright, let's see, let's go back on here. Alright, this thing's all back together, looking pretty good. Let's fire it up one more time before we take it for the first ride. Alright, let's see if she moves. Well, we made it out to the land. Let's go rip this thing pretty hard and see if we can clear out that pipe. I'm hoping this thing stops smoking here soon. Finally, it stopped smoking. It was puffing out a ton of smoke there before, but it's finally not smoking at all. So I think it burned out all that oil in the pipe, because before it was just pouring out oil. And now that pipe is dry. Look at that. Last video was just dripping oil from there. No smoke anywhere. So the new rings fixed our smoking problem. And the clutch is definitely getting better. I think we just needed to soak those clutch plates a little bit longer. We soaked them for 2 hours. It must not have been enough to get all that oil soaked in. So as we run this thing, it grabs a lot better and better. So clutch is finally starting to work. There's plenty of slack in the cable, so I know it's not that. You can see there's plenty of slack there. Probably 2 millimeters of slack. So, you know, I think as long as those clutch plates continue to soak in oil, this will get better and better. But it's grabbing pretty good right now. It seems like it's geared really low, and it doesn't go like extremely fast, but fast enough for a little 250. It's probably going 40, close to 40. But yeah, I mean, we almost cleared out all the smoke in the pipe. Let me quick rev it up a couple times for you guys. I mean, there's no smoke at all now, so obviously the rings fixed the problem. So I'm pretty happy with that. For a second there, I didn't know if this thing was going to stop smoking. It was smoking a ton, burning off all that oil. But she is fixed now, good to go. So we're going to ride this thing for another hour, and I'm hoping that the clutch gets better and better as we ride it. But that's really the only small issue with it right now. Otherwise it's running good, driving good, both brakes work. Suspension kind of sucks, but for a $300 quad, what do you expect? But yeah, always starts right back up. Instantly. Revs out good. I mean, for 300 bucks, I think we did pretty good. Well, just got this one all cleaned up. It's looking pretty good. So this one is complete, ready to go. No issues with it anymore. I rode it for another hour and the clutch is a lot better. So I think I just didn't soak them in oil long enough. So it's grabbing pretty good now. So everything's fixed, no longer smokes. The clutch is working, and yeah, it's a pretty nice quad for 400 bucks. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, picking this one up for 300 bucks, diagnosing it, tearing it all down, rebuilding it, doing the first start, and then the first ride on it. It was definitely a process trying to look for parts for this thing and figure it all out. But we got it done in the end, and another quad is saved. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Stay tuned for next video, and until next time, we are